Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. The Vatican has confirmed that Pope Francis's funeral will take place this Saturday. World leaders, including Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, are expected to attend. Trump backs his Defense Secretary Peter Hegseth over reports of a second signal chat leak. And organisers of the Oscars say movies created with the help of artificial intelligence can win top awards at the iconic ceremony. We are continuing our coverage of the death of Pope Francis, who died at 88 after a long battle with a chronic lung condition. Known as the Pontiff of Peace and a champion of the poor, his legacy resonates worldwide. The Vatican says his funeral will be held on Saturday at 10 a.m. in St. Peter's Square. To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Dubai 92 presenter Jono Hayes and Al Arabiya senior presenter Rawia Alami. Thank you for both joining me this evening, Jono and Rawia. So obviously, lots and lots of information coming out of the Vatican today about the Pope and the details of his funeral. What more do we know?
Well, this is what's going to happen in the next few days until Saturday, which is the day of the funeral. Tomorrow, Wednesday, the Pope will be taken to St. Peter's Basilica. His coffin will remain there until the day of the funeral, of course, for people to pay respects. Now, it will take place, when we're talking about the funeral now, it will take place outdoors, right in front of St. Peter's Basilica. The Dean of the College of Cardinals will, of course, lead the service, the funeral service. He will deliver the final commendation, as it's called, which is like a concluding prayer, formally entrusting the Pope to God. And then after the funeral, the Pope's body will be moved to St. Maria Maggiore, where he will be buried. And by the way, he is the first in a century, the first Pope in a century not to be buried in St. Peter's Basilica. But this is the thing about Pope Francis, the late Pope Francis, that he did a lot of changes, and he actually did a lot of arrangements for his funeral last year. Where he changed a lot of things. One of them that he will be in a wooden coffin, not in the elaborate three coffins that usually popes are put into before the burial.
So really breaking with protocol in many ways with the Catholic Church, Jono. But who is expected to attend his funeral?
This will be a who's who of world leaders. So far, we've got names that have been put out there. Donald Trump has said he will attend the funeral. Volodymyr Zelensky, Emmanuel Macron will be there as well. Prince William will be there. There was some speculation that even perhaps King Charles may be in attendance. But now we know that it's Prince William who will be representing the UK at large. There will be pretty much any world leader who is currently in a seat of power, be it prime ministers or presidents from around the world, will be in attendance at this. It will be on par with what we saw at Pope John Paul II's funeral in 2005. So we will be expecting a conglomeration of many, many world leaders who will all descend upon the Vatican when that funeral happens on Saturday.
And you obviously have reported on a Pope's funeral before. And I just want to ask you, what about the magnitude of people who turn up? I think a lot of us forget just how important the Vatican is as a place.
With the billions of people who are Roman Catholics around the world, we can expect it to be a mass of people who will arrive into Rome in the next couple of days to file past the body of Pope Francis. That will, as you mentioned, take place in St. Peter's Basilica, whereby the faithful will file past and will pay their respects. But we can expect it to go on for the next 3 days, whereby there will be these many thousands of people every single day going past there as well. It is of a magnitude that you've not seen before. The security getting in and out, because keeping in mind Vatican City in itself, although it is an autonomous country, is a tiny area inside the greater city of Rome. The security measures in place on the Rome side by the Carbonari and on the Vatican side by the Swiss Guards will be quite immense. You can expect there to be something on the scale that you've never seen before. We've seen the Queen's funeral. We know how extremely regimented that was. The history and the tradition of a papal funeral goes back almost as long as the Catholic Church itself, and these are unchanged. There's a 500-page manuscript which must be rigorously stuck to for the duration of the Pope's funeral, right through to every little detail about the Pope's funeral is documented in this 500-page book.
Amazing. And I actually read there the Catholic Church is more than 2,000 years old, changed leadership 266 times.
Wow.
So they know how to put these processions on, if you want.
They have a lot of experience.
They have a lot of experience, exactly. But I wanted to ask you also, just moving forward, Rawia, the next step on choosing a pope, the next pope is something, once again, shrouded in secrecy.
It's a very complicated process, very secretive. We're talking about 250 cardinals from 90 countries, yet only 135 can vote, who are below the age of 80. Now, we're talking about 15 to 20 days usually after the death or the funeral of the Pope. The cardinals they swear an oath of secrecy. They are completely cut off from the outside world, no communication. They will sleep, or they will even, as I read, actually, they sweep usually the Sistine Chapel for any listening devices, or spy devices. And all the cardinals will stay in St. Martha's house where the Pope used to live until they choose the cardinal. Now, the voting happens in a very interesting way because they vote twice a day, each day that they're there. They vote in the morning, they vote in the afternoon, and they keep voting until one cardinal gets 2/3 of the votes, basically. And after every voting, they burn the cards, and that's why we have the white smoke or the black smoke. So if no cardinal has been chosen, no pope has been chosen, therefore they will burn the cards, adding some chemicals that will make the smoke black. But if they do, then they use chemicals that will make it white, signaling.
It can be quite stressful because sometimes it comes out great, doesn't it?
Yeah, sometimes you're not sure. Because it's changed, and it's like you said, it's chemicals now. Previously, it would have been hay, would have been what would have been used, and the damp hay would have given out a white smoke. So that would have been previously what was used to indicate that habemus papam, that moment where you would say we have a pope, could finally be announced. But it will be a media frenzy of just 47,000 cameras focused on the Sistine Chapel chimney. But we are, as you say, 15 to 20 days away.
And it can take days, by the way. I mean, the longest one, I think, took 5 or 6 days.
Yeah, there has been the famous reason why it is a conclave and why they go into the Sistine Chapel and why they're locked inside, and a Faraday cage is placed around, meaning no signal can get in or out of the Sistine Chapel for mobile phones. There is no Twitter or there is no Instagram while they're there, unfortunately for them. The whole reason behind it is because many hundreds of years ago, it took them so long that the public of Rome decided eventually to just lock them into a room. They still didn't make up their mind, so they took the roof off of the chapel and said, right, now you've got to make a decision. And so very quickly the popes decided, OK, we'll decide. It's going to be one of us.
And they took the roof off the chapel and also said they could only eat bread and drink water until they had made a decision. So that's how they once put pressure on them. But Jono, the man who is in charge of the Vatican right now, his name's Kevin, and he's from Dublin. Can you tell us more about Kevin from Dublin? Yes. I feel like everyone knows a Kevin from Dublin.
Well, it's quite generic. This one seems...
I'm sure Jono knows.
I don't know him personally, but he seems quite qualified for this position. So Kevin Farrell, he's held several positions in the US. So although, yes, he was born in Dublin, the majority of his clerical career has been based in the US. He served as auxiliary archbishop for Washington, having been appointed by Pope Benedict XVI, or Pope John Paul, I believe. He also went on to serve as the Bishop of Texas after that as well, at which point, I believe in 2017, he was called to Rome by Pope Francis, who said that, and famously, Pope Francis had a very good sense of humour. And he said, I believe Texas might need a better bishop than you. So he recalled him to Rome for a lesser position than what he currently has, which is Camerlingo, or the Chamberlain, and means that he is in charge of everything, right through from the second that Pope Francis will have passed away until the conclave takes place, including all of the voting. He is effectively running the shop in the Vatican right now. And although no big decisions will be made by Kevin Farrell, he still is the guy who, at the end of the day, at the moment at least, is somewhat of an interim pope without any of the title. He will retain
But
the title.
theoretically, he can be voted as the Pope, yet practically...
Theoretically, yes. So
happen.
it has happened twice, whereby the Camerlengo of the entire conclave has been voted as the Pope. Obviously, this guy, we're going to see a lot of him. We're going to see him during the papal funeral mass. So we're going to see a lot of this guy. We saw him seal the papal apartments with the wax. So we will see him a lot. He made that announcement in somewhat of a mixed Irish-Latin accent, unusually yesterday, to announce that, unfortunately, and sadly, that Pope Francis had passed away. So we will see a lot of this guy in the next couple of weeks, which you would think would make him a contender. But given history, it seems that although you may be the Camerlengo, you will not be guaranteed a seat, so to speak, at the table. He is of voting age. He is 78 years old. But there are a few other candidates who, it seems, are far more the favourite to take the position of the 267th Pope.
Absolutely fascinating. The inner workings of the Catholic Church is amazing.
I mean, there's a lot of talk or prediction that, or questions whether the next Pope will be from Africa, or is he going to be the first African Pope? And the thing is, I've read some information saying that even if the next Pope is from Africa, he wouldn't be the first African Pope. Apparently, it happened 3 times in the past.
Wow.
And the last one was Pope Gelasius, who died 1,500 years ago.
You got to go back.
And he was
a bit
from
for that.
Africa.
Yeah, you have to go back a bit for that. Yeah.
There's been a lot of Italian popes right through, and I mean, from memory, certainly from my grandparents' time, any of the popes right through until John Paul I would have been Italian popes. Then the break from tradition was John Paul II, who was Polish.
And
then you had Pope Benedict XVI, German, and then finally Argentinian Pope Francis. So there has been a break from the Italian, and although they do hold the majority in the papal conclave, the majority, I believe it's 30 or 20 of the cardinals are actually Italian. So there is a solid chance it may be one of the Italians who do.
There are some American.
There are some Americans.
Well,
there is an amazing Filipino cardinal who also looks like he could be a shoe-in for this. But really, until those conversations are happening, which will be starting from now, and although it's not an election campaign, this might be the election campaign for the biggest job in the world, but nobody's actually campaigning. So it will be an interesting number of dinners, I think, held over the next couple of days in Rome as the cardinals begin to descend upon the Holy City.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it a lot more. Thank you so much for that. Stay right there as we take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines around the world today. A Hamas delegation has departed for Cairo to discuss new ideas aimed at securing a ceasefire in Gaza. The proposed plan includes the release of all Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails, a formal end to the war and a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. The last ceasefire collapsed a month ago when Israel resumed bombing in Gaza. Harvard University has filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration for freezing federal grants worth $2.2 billion. The university claims the freeze is unlawful and would hamper critical disease research. The Trump administration froze the funds after Harvard refused to comply with demands to suppress student protests and screen international applications based on their political views, particularly regarding Palestine. Now, US border authorities are grappling with the wave of egg smuggling from Mexico. It comes as American consumers are seeking relief from record prices for eggs, which are exceeding $10 per dozen. The price disparity has created a thriving black market where a dozen eggs is selling for around $3. The crisis stems from multiple factors such as the avian flu outbreak, which has devastated poultry flocks nationwide. A European Space Agency project is assessing the viability of growing so-called lab-grown food in space. The experiment is expected to reduce the cost of feeding an astronaut, which can be up to $26,000 per day. Now, US President Donald Trump is backing his Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth after reports that military attack details were shared in a group chat that included Hegseth's wife, brother, and also personal lawyer. In the second signal chat, the US Defense Secretary shared information about airstrikes against Yemen. Here's what the president had to say about the issue when questioned by reporters at the White House Easter egg roll event.
Oh, total. Why do you even ask a question like that? We have recruitments that's at an all-time high. The spirit in the armed forces is fantastic. No, great confidence. Are you bringing up Signal again? I thought they gave that up 2 weeks ago.
There was a new report this weekend that you used it in a separate chat that included some family members.
It's all just the same old stuff from the media. That's an old one. Try finding something new.
Okay, so pretty dismissive there from President Donald Trump, saying find something new. But what more do we know about this latest signal leak?
Well, we know at the time that when Donald Trump was questioned that he didn't actually know, or he wasn't aware that this story had just broken. We do know the details, at least loosely, from what we've been given, and we know that now news sources like The Guardian have said that they have verified that the signal leak is accurate and is correct, because up until now we've seen some denial about this. And now that we have what we would say is somewhat confirmed proof, we do believe that it is accurate, it is true, and it does seem Pete Hegseth has shared this information with his wife, who, by the way, is a former Fox News correspondent, and with his brother, who is now also in the administration in a wonderful show of nepotism. So you do have to question also who is sharing the information like this of such a sensitive nature with their family members, which begs a whole other question. What we know about what's in there is limited with regards to what it discusses in more detail. We know that it is a very, very confidential information. In fact, so much so that it would carry a prison sentence for anybody had they been found with such vital, sensitive information in any other given day. But we don't know exactly what has been shared and exactly what's in there.
But once again, Rawia, Pete Hegseth has actually been speaking to Fox and Friends today, and he did co-host on the network for 10 years. And what he's saying is that none of this is based on reality. What happens is he blames staff that has been fired for leaking information to try and sabotage Trump and what the administration is trying to achieve. There has been some rumours that Trump was possibly looking for a replacement.
Well, yes, there have been some rumors. They're based on an NPR report citing U.S. officials saying that Trump is looking for a replacement for Hegseth. However, the White House yesterday blasted these reports, saying it's fake news. And then we heard not just from the White House, from President Trump himself, who kept saying that Pete Hegseth is doing a great job. And also the White House spokeswoman was saying that Trump has full confidence in Hegseth. So whether these rumors are true or not, to be honest, there's no way to tell. But I think it will unfold in the next few days, probably, or next few weeks.
What Hegseth has said is that they are retrospective. So this is now looking back at something which occurred in March. What the administration has said is that this is, as we pointed out, it is former employees who are disgruntled, who are saying that this information was leaked in advance. There may be some truth to that. And then the question is, well, why is Donald Trump saying no? And I think his exact words were, Pete's doing a great job. You know, everybody likes Pete. There's no issue. And the reason is, I guess that's the hill he's going to die on. This is his administration. He has appointed these people to this position. He has faith in him, in that position. And therefore saying anything other than Pete's doing a great job is kind of admitting defeat. And if we've learned anything from this administration as we head on for almost 100 days, we've learned that defeat is not really part of the lexicon.
So we're 93 days in, actually, and that's something I wanted to touch on. Pete Hegseth was controversial as a pick for this position. We know that. We talked about that previously. But is it all about loyalty, do you think, when it comes to the Trump administration, Jono and Rawia? Is this what we're seeing now? He's going to stand by absolutely everything, even though this was actually a second leak, because we know Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic, a journalist, was added to the first Signal group chat. So it seems to be a little bit confusing at the moment.
You're looking at a cabinet that is controversial across the board. There's been very few appointments, and again, Rawia and I discussed this earlier, there's been very few appointments that he made that were not in some way controversial, people who you would think otherwise may not be qualified for the position. He has to stand by the decision. You're not long enough into this cabinet to say, well, okay, well, maybe a change is necessary or a change is good. Certainly the insider information would indicate that perhaps there may be some flutters of uncertainty and uneasiness at play underneath. But the attitude seems to be, if they're not playing ball, get them off the field. And again, we're very early into this administration. You do have to stand by the players and say, this is who I think is in the right place, Leigh Ann. And I think that he will do that for the longest time, until such a time when, because people have called for Pete to resign, that's not going to happen.
I completely agree, to be honest. This Pete Hegseth was definitely one of the controversial, or one of the very controversial appointments that President Trump did when he took office. And there were many other controversial appointments as well. But it's obvious that President Trump chooses his cabinet or people surrounding him based mainly on loyalty. There were questions also about Steve Witkoff, the super special envoy for President Trump to the Middle East, to Russia, and now to Iran as well. And so many questions were raised as to why him, especially because he is a real estate lawyer. He started off as a real estate lawyer, and then now he is a real estate mogul. He has no experience in politics whatsoever. But this is it. I think a lot of people, or a lot of experts, see that President Trump has learned his lesson from his first term, where he felt backstabbed and betrayed by a lot of his aides and a lot of people that he appointed, and he decided that this time around it's going to be based on loyalty. Loyalty comes first.
And what he's appointing are businessmen, effectively, at the end of the day. You are looking at...
Similar people too.
They're similar to him, but they are also, and he's rightly, in his own words, pointed out previously, this country the US is a business, and therefore businessmen should be able to run a business. So what he has done is appointed people who do know business, and he stands by that. And at this stage of the early stage of the administration, I think that it's a trial and error situation. If this turns out to be true and it's the second slip up, then perhaps a conversation may be had about Pete Hegseth's future within the Trump administration.
So you don't think we'll see any dramatic moves when it comes to Pete Hegseth's career in the White House?
I don't think. Not immediately, but maybe depending on what else leaks, to be honest with you, or more proof of what has leaked. I think then maybe we will see some decisions by
because when the story first leaked, I did think to myself, surely they must just be unlucky to have been caught or to have added a journalist to this, because I'm sure, and this is the way, I know we shouldn't say it, but maybe a lot of people communicate now because it's almost instantaneous.
I don't know what Signal is. I had to do the research behind it to find out what Signal is, why am I not on it, and who's adding their wife loosely, but and it is encrypted. But who's adding their wife onto those chats to have those conversations? And again, if it is sabotage, then it's been well orchestrated. If it is a slip up, then yes. Is it dramatic changes? No. Drama? Yes. I think we're in for another dose of drama. And every single week this administration is biting back on another headline that it really doesn't need. It doesn't need to kick off Easter Monday with this story of all things. And it certainly didn't need this to be the latest headline to hit and take more attention to the Trump administration. It's not what they needed this week.
No, absolutely. Yeah, let's have a look. Let's see what comes of Pete Hegseth's future. But stay right there and we'll be back in just a moment. In other news, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, says the US and India have finalized the terms for a trade deal. It comes after Vance met with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Delhi. India is among a number of countries negotiating trade deals with the US during Trump's 90-day pause on higher tariffs. Correspondent Ishan Garg tells us more from New Delhi in India.
Trade has been the focal point of J.D. Vance's India trip. When Mr. Vance met India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday for very lengthy conversations, the meeting concluded with the two sides announcing that they have now decided on what's called the terms of reference of a bilateral trade agreement. This essentially means that the two leaders have decided on the directions and the overall contours of how the negotiations of this trade deal are going to take place. The two sides say that this agreement is going to be crucial to boosting India-US bilateral trade to about $300 billion by the end of this decade from about $129 billion that it currently stands at. Now, this trade deal is crucial for New Delhi because it is hoping that through this deal, it will be able to cushion some of the impact from the US tariffs. US had announced 26% tariffs on New Delhi, which have now been paused for 90 days. But many analysts had said that if those tariffs were to continue, India could be hit with nearly $7 billion in losses in trade every single year because of them. Now, India's tariff rates compared to other countries are still relatively low, but still New Delhi is hoping to negotiate a trade deal with the US, and it wants to provide the US lower import tariffs on a variety of products, all the way from cars to automotive products, and that's something that US President Donald Trump had wanted from India all along. But analysts are also saying that J.D. Vance's visit to India is also to, in a sense, ensure that this trade tension between US and India does not derail the overall relationship, which is perhaps why when he was speaking to academics and bureaucrats in the North Indian city of Jaipur, he said that apart from trade, defense ties are also crucial for New Delhi and US ties at a time when both sides want to see a more secure Indo-Pacific region. Ishan Garg, Arabiya News, New Delhi.
Now, organisers of the Oscars have issued new rules that say films made with the help of artificial intelligence will be able to win top awards at the ceremony. They say using AI and other digital tools would neither help nor harm the chances of achieving a nomination. So, first of all, I just wanted to say, Rawia, really, these rules feel like something out of the future, and they're pretty controversial.
They are indeed. I mean, they could be the future of cinema, or they can be the end of it. And actually, this is what the Hollywood strike was all about. It was AI being the enemy number one of Hollywood during that strike, which happened in 2023, because they, actors, writers, everyone is afraid for their jobs, that AI is going to replace their jobs. Now, with these new, with these new rules, are there any sort of details about how much AI can be used, how the AI is supposed to be used? Because as we've found out that even in the last Oscars, Adrian Brody won Best Actor, even though his voice was altered by AI so he can get a better Hungarian accent. Now, I think personally that if AI is going to be used and allowed to be used in movies, then at least on the judging panels for such big prizes like the Oscars, then we should have experts that can tell us how much AI is being used. Is it being used within the framework of the rules of the Academy or not?
Impossible to police.
Which is very hard.
You know, when we're having these conversations, how will they even know? I don't know.
90% of what I see online these days, I have to question and wonder, is this AI? Am I looking at a deep fake? And I think a lot of these, it's now gotten so sophisticated that it's almost impossible to tell the difference. And I think we're at the point whereby AI has been seen as a help and not a hindrance, not just towards acting, but also towards every element of our life. I find it very difficult to now not embrace AI. And I think if actors, and with all due respect and all credit to them, perhaps that's where the industry is going to. Perhaps it is going to a place whereby we're making movies that are Avatar-esque, or they are made with actors using CGI and the benefits of AI. Perhaps that's where we're going to, and it's a case of diversification is the key to survival in an industry. We have seen already many industries be affected by developments moving forward. If we take it back 100 years ago, mining, milling, those industries were all being done by hand, manually. Those things are now gone the way of instruments. We now use tools and computers to do the same work for us. Likewise, computing, and there's a really good movie that was out about how computers were basically people sitting in a room up until the 1960s. AI is just the next advancement on that. And actors will need to diversify in order to keep jobs or keep themselves relevant.
That's true, but there's also a copyright issue here, and that's what some of the actors actually brought up, like Susan Sarandon, Scarlett Johansson. They're saying that basically AI, because it uses already copyrighted material that is posted online, whether it be, stories, scripts, or anything else, then basically using such material is infringing copyright laws and possibly misrepresenting some of these actors, whether in their likeness or misusing their names, misrepresenting them, and therefore actually there are a lot of lawsuits. OpenAI and other tech companies are facing multiple court cases.
Yeah, copyright's been a big issue, hasn't it, really, since the internet in many ways. But also, just when it comes to stuff like AI, I was thinking earlier, what about creativity? You know, people are so creative, and what happens now if you can just put something into ChatGPT and you can almost write a short story? Does that not kill a little bit of the creative world?
My concern, Leigh Ann, is that we're stifled creatively when we come to movies at the moment, because it realistically, anything that I've seen in the cinema recently has been a remake of something, a musical that's been taken and turned into a live-action remake, or a live-action remake of a classic movie like The Lion King. That's kind of what we're getting when it comes to movies these days, and new ideas seem to be few and far between. So instead of saying, well, AI is not assisting us, it's actually stopping us from being more creative, and people aren't sitting down in order to write things anymore, perhaps we need to look at AI and say, okay, well, this is going to give us new ideas. Finally, we're going to get new movies and not the same rehashed
But is it
tripe.
new ideas? Because it's actually generating old ideas.
But if it is, it's still
That's
that's exactly what Hollywood's doing. I find it difficult right now to think if Hollywood's doing anything that's not just rehashing old ideas, putting the same movies out, doing sequels to movies that nobody really wanted. And I think, well, where's the fresh ideas? Where's the new idea? It's been a while since, I think, Oppenheimer, maybe the last movie that I thought was original, but again, it's based on a true story.
And I went to the cinema last time and I actually watched Bridget Jones, and that's just the sequel. Yeah, so it's a follow-up, so it wasn't really original, but I'm a lot older compared to the first one, but it was absolutely brilliant. But you know, we speak so much about all of this, but AI could be good for one thing, Rawia. I actually saw that has been used to de-age some actors. Yeah. So the likes of Tom Hanks.
I completely endorse and agree with that use. It's wonderful. I endorse it.
I was wondering if Al Arabiya would, get a DH.
You should speak to them.
Yeah, maybe. I think so. I think it's a good idea.
No, it's visually only. It's not in real life. It doesn't actually de-age you in real life. It's just for the cameras. You're aware of that, right? Because
we work in front of cameras, so that would work.
You still have to look in the same mirror at the end of the day, which is the unfortunate
part. But as long
as
it's not going out on the camera, that's okay. We could always get a ring light over our head for the mirror. But just one thing that fascinated me when I was reading the story a little bit earlier, and we touched on this earlier too. They're changing the rule for people who nominate for the Oscars. I don't really know. I'm not very good on the movie side of things, but what
That is shocking, to be honest. Well, according to the new rules, that all members of the Academy, 6,000 of them, who vote on different movies and films, they are obliged to watch the movies, which makes me think, what were they doing
previously?
Before? Exactly. They weren't watching. And therefore, how were they voting? And how can we trust the results, Doesn't that sort of undermine the credibility of the Oscars in general? If people were voting without actually watching the movies?
Honestly, I honestly thought people sat down and because that's what they're paid to do, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a fee involved here.
Of course,
the money's coming from somewhere. I thought they were sitting down, watching every movie. I trusted in them. That was what was happening in advance.
Too.
We need to do somewhat of similar to a papal conclave. I'm pitching this idea to Hollywood.
Yes.
Lock them in a room.
Exactly.
Watch all the movies. And then you can pick a winner for the best motion picture. Perfect.
They can just have bread and water until they decide, basically.
I was shocked, honestly. That was shocking for me. And it made me think about all the movies, great and non-great, that actually won the Oscars in the past.
And the ones that missed out. What if they didn't watch it?
Missed out, exactly. That were really good.
And some, I think, the Oscars didn't often get it right, and now I know why. No one was watching it.
Except La La Land.
Oh,
They
but
got
my
it very
favourite.
wrong.
Oh my gosh, I was just about to say that.
I think they got that wrong.
Oh, really? You didn't like La La Land?
I didn't love it. It's very happy, clappy musical, and that's
oh
fine.
my gosh, I
watch it,
loved
actually.
it.
See,
I didn't see it.
you could be on the Oscars committee. You didn't watch the movie.
Voting on the
I loved
Oscars.
La La Land.
I think it's like Wicked. It's an acquired taste.
Yes.
And I think you have to be in the right frame of mind. And I think I watched it on a flight, and that's not the right frame of mind for it.
Oh
So.
my gosh, that's so
Again,
interesting.
that's an opinion.
There we are. I love that opinion.
At least
but-
you watched it.
Yes,
Yes,
at least.
yes, I'm overqualified
I
for
feel
the Oscar
like
committee.
I still have a little tear in my eye when I think about La La Land.
I have
Oh,
to
it's
watch
brilliant.
it
You
then.
have to watch it. But anyway, we're moving on from that, and we're going to go on to another sequel, and it's the final sequel. We've reached that point in the show where Jono and Rawia, you've come up with a couple of quirky stories of the day, and I always love these stories. Jono, I want to start with you because I want to talk to you about what you've come up with. Apparently, kids shouldn't be doing chores.
Not my words. Not my words, Leigh Ann. Getting kids to do household chores is apparently dying out. Parents are now saying that it is not fair and that it in fact amounts to child cruelty. And this is not just one or two, but a sign that seems youngsters are being increasingly mollycoddled. 1 in 5 parents say they actually think it's harmful to make the kids do simple tasks, make the bed, mow the lawn. All these things are seen as surmounting to child cruelty, which I think is a little bit ludicrous.
I think
and
I
a
agree.
lit-
That's
a li-
ridiculous.
a
Even though
little-
I hope my parents are watching, to be honest, because they made me do so many things.
Mowing the lawn, this
When I
sounds
was
nice.
young.
Mowing the lawn, making the bed, this sounds nice. Like, find a child from a farm who's been sent out to milk the cows and then come back to me and tell me that may amount to child cruelty, but this seems okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that seems
normal.
okay.
Not just that, there are studies now that prove, I mean, you keep seeing them popping up on social media, that kids who do chores turn up to be much more successful adults, much more responsible adults as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Because I
it
was
just
thinking...
doesn't make sense, to
I
be
was thinking
honest.
about this because I was thinking, you know, if you don't do chores, one, sometimes you're rewarded with pocket money, so that's always quite nice. Or you also go on to your life outside of home and you know how to cook, you know how to wash your clothes,
Do your
the
laundry,
simple
yeah.
things of life. So are kids going to be missing out on these vital skills
It's
that
all
they
life
really
skills.
need?
Well,
Absolutely.
it goes further to say that cleaning the car is apparently the worst thing you can make the kids do. And some...
What happens if they find money under the seat?
Well, a rare treat these days. I
Yeah.
imagine nobody carries cash anymore.
That's true.
But the issue is that these kids then, as you said, there's very little life skills. But parents are saying that it doesn't really matter what tasks they ask their kids to do because the kids are refusing to do the household chores anyway. And I understand there's a slight generational gap here when I tell this story, but there may have been a slightly more strong-handed approach to say no to chores when I was younger than there is now, and I think that might be the
Yes.
difference.
I think kids are
Yeah,
very
absolutely
privileged
true.
nowadays. They are, to be honest with you.
Uh,
They can refuse, they can have a choice.
Do your kids, do they refuse, your kids?
No, to be honest, they don't. When I ask them to do something, they do, quite honestly.
Is there repercussions if they don't? Because that's what I
Yes.
think. The repercussions are
Yeah.
less these days than they would have been previously.
There are, probably less than what the
For sure.
repercussions
Yeah.
for me if I said no
Yeah.
back in the day. But I mean, yeah, no.
I mean, I'm hardly one to talk. I got to be honest. I was absolutely terrible as a kid doing chores. I think it was a nightmare for my parents, and I don't think they pushed me hard enough in order to do those chores. And once I went to university, that element of trying to adult
Yeah.
was far more difficult because I genuinely didn't know what the different buttons on a washing machine meant. I didn't really know how a microwave worked. Loosely, I say loosely.
Oh, John.
God, that's funny
I
because
lived
I
with
had this-
lots of them in halls like you.
I had a conversation with my son actually a couple of days ago, and I was telling him he's going off to university so at this summer, basically. And I was like, do you know how to do your laundry? And he's like, no, I don't. I was thinking, this is a good lesson. I need to
and this is
teach him.
Here's a hack, another hack. This is great for the iPhone. If you just open the camera app on the iPhone
Yeah.
and you put it up to your laundry label, it will tell you what you need to do
No way.
with the clothing. Not a joke. I found this out only when they did the iOS update. I found this out, and I thought, well, that's it then.
You
I
don't,
no longer...
you don't need to do chores.
That's-
you don't need
that's
anybody to
life-changing,
teach you.
isn't it?
You can
Game changer.
Google or
Yeah.
YouTube
Yeah.
everything. There's
Well, if my
instruction
mum-
videos on everything.
If my mum's watching, I did everything I was told to do because my mum is Not a woman you say no to. And quickly, Rawia, yours about someone in quicksand who fell in love.
Yes,
but
a
didn't know they were in
Michigan
love.
man who got stuck up to his waist in quicksand, and that was on Lake Michigan Beach, one of the beaches. And of course, apparently this is not the first time it happens to him. He managed to free himself last time, but this time apparently it was really, really difficult. Yet he had a colleague of his. They both worked together, and they're really close friends. But they discovered during the incident, apparently, that they had feelings for each other. So he ended up being saved and has a girlfriend now as well.
And got caught in quicksand twice.
Yeah, that's unlucky.
yeah.
That's unlucky.
Probably more.
I don't know if he's looking for it or if that's unlucky. But thank you so much for those great stories and doing your chores on choosing those quirky stories, because I want everyone to know, the audience watching, you have
It's
to
not
do the
easy, by the
background.
way.
Yeah,
It's-
that's
it's
not
not that
easy.
Is there pocket money?
Yes, there's pocket money.
You did say that earlier.
Yes, it comes once a month. Thank you so much to today's guests, Dubai 92 presenter Jono Hayes and Al Arabiya senior presenter Rawia Alami. Here's a reminder of our top stories. The Vatican has confirmed that Pope Francis's funeral will take place this Saturday. World leaders, including Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, are expected to attend. Trump backs his Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth over reports of a second Signal chat leak. And organisers of the Oscars say movies created with the help of artificial intelligence can win top awards at the iconic ceremony. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also follow us on X. GNT with Tom Burgess-Watson is coming up next. And of course, that is followed by The Dressing Room. Goodbye and thank you for joining us.